Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the 12th edition of ALFILM. I am sorry we have started with a little bit of delay. We had a little bit of technical issues, but now everything is fine and I am very happy to welcome you to the Spotlights panel discussion entitled Genres Revisited, Visionary Imagery and Fragmented Narratives in Contemporary Arab Cinema. I am Pascal Fakhri, the artistic director of the festival, and I am very happy to welcome with me this afternoon Irit Neidhardt, who will be moderating this discussion. Good afternoon, Irit.
Good afternoon.
And also to welcome our two panelists, Larissa Sansour, director of In Vitro. Good afternoon, Larissa.
Good afternoon.
And last but not least, Ghassan Salhab, director of The Last Man. Good afternoon, Ghassan. Before I leave the floor to you, dear Irit, Larissa, and Ghassan, I would like to say a few words about the 12th edition of ALFILM, of the spotlight of the 12th edition of ALFILM. In the last couple of years, Arab film experts and film critics specialized in Arab cinema have observed an increase in the number of genre films produced in the Arab world. They have underlined the sudden interest of Arab filmmakers in what is commonly considered male genres, namely action, horror, science fiction, fantasy, and road movies. Genre films have always existed in the Arab world, especially in countries with an active film industry like Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. But the common genres of Arab cinema are, but genre films have always been produced in the Arab worlds where there have been a cinema industry. The common genres of Arab cinema are usually melodrama and comedy in a variety of its forms. Waves of action films also saw the light in the 1970s, for instance, in Egypt, or again in the 1980s in Lebanon. But the production of these low-budget films soon came to an end because of a lack of public interest favoring the Hollywood or Bollywood version of these genres. What we are observing now is a new wave of interest in these male film genres, as more and more filmmakers from various countries of the Arab world are integrating conventions of the action, horror, or science fiction and fantasy in their films. What has changed? In most countries of the Arab world, there is no film industry, and the state funding is close to non-existent. Films are often financed by European interested parties or film markets and institutes from various countries of the Gulf or Egypt. These parties were until recently not very open to financing Arab genre films, favoring social realism, as it is considered to be the proper vehicle to document and make visible the reality of the struggles of the people living in these regions. But lately, a global shift in the position of film experts and the media towards genre films took place. Action, horror, science fiction, etc. are being recognized as not only means for entertainment. Genre conventions are now viewed as valid instruments to address political, social, and cultural questions. This change of position toward genre films, making them more attractive for the parties funding Arab cinema, is an important factor in the shift we observe today. Another important point is the capacity of film genres to tackle taboo questions, all the while removing them for the more down-to-earth world of social realism. In the non-realistic world of fantasy, science fiction, or horror, a filmmaker can address taboo questions directly without having to fear censorship. The films we chose to highlight in the 12th edition of ALFILM, in the spotlight of the 12th edition of ALFILM, are artful and creative films in which an author integrates genre conventions into his own aesthetic and uses the conventions to address political, social, and cultural topics. To further elaborate on this matter, I will soon leave you in the hands of Irit Neidhardt, Larissa, and Ghassan. And before that, just a few words about you, dear Irit. Irit Neidhardt graduated in political science, Islamic sciences, and anthropology from the University of Münster, Germany. In 2002, she decided to devote her working life to cinema and founded the international distribution and sales company, MECFilm, complementary to her freelancing. She is the associate producer and co-producer of many award-winning Arab films, Among them, Mahmoud al-Mas'ad's award-winning feature documentary, Recycle from Egypt, released in 2007, Simon Haber's highly acclaimed The One-Man Village from Lebanon, released in 2008, Kamal al-Jafari critically acclaimed Port of Memory from Palestine, released in 2009, and Damien Onouri's prize-winning Fida'i from Algeria, released in 2012, and many, many other films. She is author of various articles on subjects related to cinema and the Arab world, focusing on issues of cooperation and financing. She has also served in juries from film festivals and funding institutions in Germany, Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, Sweden, and London. Good evening again, Irit. I will leave the floor to you now.
Okay, thanks for having me and for the nice introduction. I will introduce the two panelists to you, and we will see a short clip, the first 2 minutes of the two films which are in the retrospective, in the spotlight after the introduction. With me is Larissa Sansour. She's with us from London. Larissa was born in East Jerusalem and grew up in Palestine. She studied then fine art in Copenhagen, London, and New York. She is working as a visual artist and includes video works and film work in her installations. In Vitro, which we are going to talk about today, is one such example. She represented Denmark at the 58th Venice Biennial, with In Vitro being part of this exhibition. Among her recent solo exhibitions are an exhibition in Copenhagen Contemporary in Denmark, Dar el Nimr in Beirut, Blue Coat in Liverpool, and many others. And Larissa lives in London. And now we are going to see a clip of In Vitro. Film might be lost in ether, but we have magical hands in the background working on that. Ah, no.
It seems that the hands are very magical. Sorry, Irit, we don't hear you.
Okay, so I will go on with the introduction of Ghassan Salhab in the image vanished. Ghassan Salhab was born in Dakar, Senegal, where he also grew up until his early teenage years before going back to Lebanon. He works as a filmmaker, and he made 7 feature-length films, if I counted correctly. and many more essay, short films and videos. All his films were shown internationally at prestigious film festivals. He is also working with other filmmakers on their scripts, and he has published his texts and articles in various, he's writing also published his texts and articles in various magazines, and published a book, now my French, Ghassan, Fragment du Livre du Naufrage in 2012. And he is here at the festival with the film The Last Man from 2006. And we don't see an image. So I will, no. There's no sound.
Clearly, humanity is not ready for science fiction yet.
No. It's something is no.
Maybe let's forget about our clip.
Yeah.
Yes, we will do without the clips. You saw the opening image of both films. I have a question to the two of you. Equally, you will see who is answering. You didn't start your work as genre filmmakers, and you do not always do genre film. Larissa's last 4 films were short science fictions, and Ghassan used elements of a zombie or vampire film in The Last Man. And for me, the question I want to begin with is, and which really interests me, is what made you decide, or what was it that you used the genre, that you switched to genre, or that you took an element of genre and included it into the films? Maybe Larissa, you start.
Thank you. I always find it different when I talk about my work in a cinema setting or when I talk about it in an art setting, because in an art setting we wouldn't use the word genre, but obviously it's all really belongs to certain stylistics that you work with in film. And I think what I'm working with is a crossover from what I'm expected to work on as an artist and what I'm expected to work on as a filmmaker. So it's kind of like toppling ideas and expectations. So the fact that I'm borrowing a lot from cinema is what interests me, not particularly the genre itself, but the fact that I'm kind of crossing over from one discipline to another, let's say. I used to work more with, say, more abstract work as an artist. And then I moved into a need to document what was happening in Palestine. Specifically in 2002, I was studying in New York and the siege of Bethlehem happened. And it's basically Israel started invading different Palestinian towns and cities and kind of aggressively using tanks and to go into the cities. And I realized that what was being reported on the news and media was completely different from what my family and friends were telling me over the phone. So it's this discrepancy that was important for me to kind of document. So that's how I started actually even working with topics relating to Palestine, because I didn't used to before, but I felt that it was kind of dishonest of me to be talking about very academic, kind of abstract work when all of my kind of thinking and engagement was with what's happening, with the urgency of what was happening in Palestine and the region. But the more I kind of started working with that, the more I felt that I'm kind of defending a particular part, and that I felt that most of what I was showing was kind of towards a Western audience, really, that seemed like I'm offering like the basics of what's really happening in the region. And so I think it was a freeing thing for me to start working in a different, unexpected way, and not something that you would assume a woman and a Middle Eastern artist to be working with. So that's kind of, in short, really why I kind of started working with Jean.
Okay, thank you, Ghassan. You have to unmute yourself.
Well, I'm not like Larissa. I'm working essentially. I'm essentially working on cinema, even if I've done 2-3 works who are related to 2 screens and sometimes even 3 screens. It's just that I don't like the word installation, so I say 2-3 screens, but it's an installation, and it's okay. And honestly, I don't think of me going to the genre or not to the genre. But of course, I know, I'm aware of it, especially when you work with what we can call the vampire genre, if I may say, more than science fiction. Because a vampire is more a very strange mythology, because it's a pure human, in fact, literature, vampire and mythology before it goes to cinema. So I'm a bit like Larissa. I like to play with the borders. I like to play with how we put a foot here and a foot here, and at the end we don't know where the whole body is. Sorry for my English, but I think it's more and less an image what I'm trying to give here. So and it's strange that we are talking now about the Last Man, because I'm finishing almost the writing of what is more or less a continuity of this film, really more or less, because I'm not very much interested in continuity directly. And especially now, more and more Beirut is, I don't know what we can call it. So for me, it's not literally playing with the genre or not, but of course, as after all, I'm a viewer too. I'm not only a filmmaker, and I've seen a lot of films, and I honestly love some genre movies. I'm not interested really as a filmmaker of doing them, and mostly science fiction, in fact, mostly. And of course, not all of them are great films, not at all even. But anyway, I go to it. It's like, you like, I don't know what kind of thing. So you go to this kind of thing, even if you know that mostly it's not interesting, but you do it, you go to it. So I'm interested because science fiction, in a way, it's like saying you are and you are not in your time, of your time. And this interests me a lot. And this fact of not playing with time, saying after all that cinema itself, I mean, without making the intellectual blah, blah, blah thing, but at the end, cinema, when you shoot it, when you edit it, and when you show it, different times already have passed. So science fiction for me is almost the perfect place, or if I may say, the big screen is almost the perfect place for it, because it's really this space-time, what we can call about cinema, trying to create a space-time. For me, science fiction is in itself this, to say it very shortly.
I have one question back to The Last Man, because you deal in the first 3 films, Phantom Beirut, Terra Incognita, and The Last Man, you are dealing with Beirut as the city, and it has to do with, to put it in my words, with taking a new look, or to reclaim or to find a new way to place yourself in the city after the 17 years of civil war. And I was wondering, when I saw The Last Man first back in 2006, if not the vampire and the zombie figure was a natural figure, so to say, for post-war situation, because in literature and also in film we find vampires and zombies oftentimes after wars, when societies are still very scattered. Or wasn't it for you, wasn't this the reference or the idea you had?
Look, I mean, none of us, when we do something, is virgin of anything. We are full of so many things we have seen, read, felt, heard, whatever. But for me, what is very, very interesting into especially vampire, not zombie. I'm not interested in zombie. I mean, in my work, I'm not saying as a viewer, say something else. I love Romero, for example. George Romero, I love his work. But and what I am very interesting into vampire, to be very honest, is simply this very simple thing. He is neither alive, neither dead. Neither. This neither. You know, the undead, as they say it in English.
Yeah.
So this is really literally what interests me, especially that for me on screen, nobody is alive, nobody is dead. Even the dead are not dead. Even the alive people are not alive. But this is my way to live with cinema. You see what I mean? So for me, vampire is almost between brackets perfect. And Beirut, my city, if I may call it my, and so my city, in a very simple way, in the fact that I live here, is literally more and more a city ready for that. It's it will be it might be exaggerating what I'm saying, but it's just a very first, if I may say, it's almost literal what I'm saying. Almost.
Okay. So I remember when Hani Abu Assad's film Rana's Wedding came out in 2002, he said something. It was also the period of the Second Intifada, and he said something when the real world is so fictional, then fiction becomes documentary to adapt the genre to the situation, because he was also asked, like referring a bit to what Larissa said, why he's doing a fiction film now with the Intifada and not documenting the situation. And the question that came up was, how do you document a totally surreal situation? What is the language or the form of expression you find for it? I was wondering if you have references for your films, like, because both of you were talking like very much coming from art and from cinema, not so much from the, like, and on the second level, let's say, the place you live in. So are there artistic or art references for you?
I mean, I'm just going back to the last thing that you've been with Hani Abu Assad, and the fact that there was a time when it became, for me, completely impossible to talk about what was happening through social realist form. And even though cinema is not really my background, it's actually moving image is what I use in order to kind of express the concepts that I'm working with. And I think that it became clear that you are disadvantaged when you are kind of the subject of documentary. So it was important for me to kind of play with those tools that are used for the privileged, or say people who hold the power and advancement. And so science fiction was the first thing to go to, for example, with things that you associate with male, with, you know, white. It's not really what I was expected to work with. So, and I think those are my references. My references became those tools that are kind of universal, and that the fact that I can claim it as a citizen of this world, that I have the right to also use those tools and do whatever I want with it. Obviously, in the art world, you know, these science fiction or is kind of associated with entertainment and kind of unserious topics. And that was kind of part of why I really wanted to also engage with it, because of this, to challenge the hierarchies that exists also in art making or cinema. So these are my references, but also a lot of philosophy and literature, because it's kind of the part of the academic discourse of what's really kind of we're talking about memory studies and psychology and all this, all things that pertain to what I'm working with, like Palestinian psyche that is traumatized, that is kind of in a limbo, as you know, Ghassan was talking about, that, you know, not dead and not alive. But when for me, I find that the state of Palestine is kind of always stuck in a past and always projecting a future, and the present is slowly disappearing, and it's not there. And that's part of kind of like the big sphere that you see in the film, that is part of that lost time. And I talk about it even more with a sculpture of that sphere, that actually I made it into a real sculpture that is being exhibited next to the film. So this idea of how do meanings shift when you shift the context also come to sculpture, but also pertains to how you can address whatever's happening in the Middle East, but in ways where when you put them in a different context, all of a sudden a new meaning can be decoded. Because I think we've become immune to certain ways of telling that story. So I think that, I think the references are from various kind of sources for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course, for me too. But to be very honest, cinematographically, I was, if I may say, conversing with a film, especially a film that of somebody who's dead from a long time ago, Murnau, you know, his famous Nosferatu, and but more what interests me a lot, because it's like of course now it's really weird to say it, but it's like a disease coming to the city. It's weird. I mean, after all, humanity had so many waves of disease in all history. Unfortunately, it's nothing. It's nothing new. But anyway, what interested me, that's why the film started with the clip that didn't start here. the you know, the sea waiting for somebody to come, like in the famous mythology of Nosferatu, coming from the sea. So coming from outside, not of course as an idea of foreigner, because I would hate people who take it this way. And so, yes, in a way, I was in kind of secret personal dialogue with this great filmmaker and great film. And I was not afraid and to converse with it. Maybe if I was younger, I would be totally, I wouldn't do it, maybe it's simply. Especially that the film, as you said it, Irit, is totally in Beirut, and Beirut is very physically present. I mean, it was very important for me, but you know, in my work, Beirut is maybe I hate those word characters and main and those things, but maybe let's say the main body of the film, if I may say. The bodies, the people who are in this film are trying to move, trying to find their place in this body which is non-stop, and now more than ever fragmented, this whatever the word is. So yeah, the references, but you know, I'm sure Larissa will say the same. We have many references, things like that, but I think we, except the Murnau, it was very clear in my head, but I think we digest them, and it's part of our life. And it's talking with today too, not only with trying at least, because especially in what we can call Middle East, it's not something settled, walhamdulillah, as we say here. It is in a permanent, I mean, the ground is always, you know, it's like in French, they would say, c'est un terrain mouvant. It's always like moving sands. Always, always. The ground is always moving. You don't know when the earth will have an earthquake. So, so for me, it's many things, of course. And of course, even if it's in the mythology, so many mythology. I'm a Mediterranean guy, after all, like Larissa. We are Mediterranean. And this is something I reivindicate all the time, not as stupidly a national thing, no, as a full and maybe overwhelmed of all kind of civilization, all kind of mythology, all kind of history. We are layers of things here. So this is part of it too.
I just want to, by listening to the two of you, I was thinking of your films, which are for the audiences online until the last day of the festival in Germany. People can watch the film in the ALFILM program. In your film, Ghassan, the isolation of the main character of Khalil Shams is almost suffocating when you watch the film. And Larissa spoke of being totally detached from, or being in New York, not detached, but being on the phone with the family and seeing something totally different in the news from the Intifada. So this is why I was interested that you said, Ghassan, there is a conversation, because or that you were in conversation with Murnau's Nosferatu, because for me also a question is when you do your films, and of course it has to do with like sorting things out in the own head, but also I'm wondering, Larissa tackled it a bit already, but for whom do you make the film, or do you think of somebody else when you make the film, or is it really an urgency from the inside to say, I need to, in this situation, I need to find something to that I can maybe look at myself and to just understand what's going on in the uncertain situation I live in, or my country is in?
This question, honestly, I never know how to answer that. And more, the older I get, the more I don't know what to answer about it.
Don't answer.
Because to be very honest, Francis Bacon, you know, the painter, not the philosopher, he said once, because I asked him, for whom are you painting? He said, for me, of course.
Yeah.
And but I'm not saying that I'm making films for me or not for me. Of course, you make film. It's not about for. In fact, let's be very clear. For me, it's not about for what or who or whatever. It's I don't know why I make films. You know, I hope I'm enough sincere that I'm making them for a place which, if I don't do it, I would have really a big problem in being part of the living people, being on Earth. And so let's be very honest, it's my own emergency first. Yeah. But of course, after comes, after all, you make a film, and to be very clear, it's like even not only cinema, of course. And it's, I remember a friend who have, you know, he make bread. He said to me, if nobody eat my bread, this bread does not exist. So it is as simple as that sometimes. If one person see the film, so the film exists. Because it have to be in connection, at least with one person. Of course, if it's two, it's better. But what I'm trying to say is, it's this matter of connection. It's like a bridge. A film for me is a kind of a bridge. Of course, from the other side, we all know, unfortunately, and I'm not saying here in a blah 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 thing, but we all know, unfortunately, most of the viewers once the film comes to them. But for me, to be very honest, it's both sides. It's like love, if I may say. Of course, I can be totally passionate of somebody I totally love, and he or she don't give a shit about me. But this is something else. What I'm trying to make to build a bridge And so if he is Lebanese, ahla wa sahla. If he's Palestinian, ahla wa sahla. If he is whatever. But as said Larissa, when you play with genre, for example, of course, this is automatically a kind of grammaire, you know, kind of that speak in a way or another to many, because it exists as a kind of course, I'm sure that, sorry, Larissa, I haven't seen yet your film, because, you know, in Beirut, we have difficulty to see anything unless you go, I don't know where, in streaming, and our internet is so woo. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say, I'm sure even the Larissa movie, I mean, we are not, and we all know great science fiction movies, they take their liberty, they in what we call genre. But after all, the genre is not, you know, it's not a package squared khalas. It moves. After all, what is the real difference between, let's say, 2001, Space Odyssey, and Solaris from Stark and Starker, even from Ammo Tarkovsky, and I don't know, Blade Runner, the first one. I don't like the second one. Whatever. What are the difference? It's the genre. They do whatever they do, and it's the same for the film noir and film like that. So what I want to say is, this is codes that some people recognize. Of course, who wants only to have fun, only to have fun. I have nothing against having fun, of course, but who only have to have fun. He might have problems with some films of those, because those films goes, yani in Arabic we say nintilit, yani we go from there, from the science fiction. We don't fit the science fiction code. We go from there. Doesn't mean we don't give a damn. Me, for example, I didn't give a damn about this cross thing, because after all, we have Muslim, as much as is not saying more. I didn't give a damn about the tibulu tum in English, garlic. And because, of course, we eat garlic here every second almost. But I give care, a lot of care, because this is very interesting. I'm doing cinema about the mirror don't reproduce you. Come on, this is incredible. The mirror don't give you your own image. This is something I couldn't put that away. So what I want to say is, we go from there. And because there is some codes, of course, the viewers are in a place, are interested, sorry. But I didn't do only genre movies, as you know, and but I go from there because honestly, I felt for a moment we are really literally undead, and more than ever, by the way, now. And as I said, cinema is a great place, and as I just said before, I'm going now into, I don't know if I will shoot it one day because it's a matter of money as usual, but I'm going again into that field.
Yeah, I mean, and to build up on what Ghassan was saying, is that the idea of that you recognize certain tropes in obviously genre cinema, but I'm completely interested in.
We lost you.
We lost you, Larissa.
We lost you.
You can't hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea of myth building, and the fact that we kind of take it for granted that social realist films are the films that kind of are a mirror to reality, is something that of course we can debate, and of course there's a lot of mediation that goes on when you're directing something. So the idea of actually just even commenting on the fact that I don't want to even be engaging in this kind of self-deception of the social realism, and I want to build my own world, where worlds that function according to my own codes, where I don't kind of succumb to certain political jargon, where it's kind of similar to like a mathematical equation. When things stop working out, you kind of posit an equation, and then with that equation you can solve that whole predicament. And I feel that there's a need to kind of start thinking in ways where you can tackle kind of an impasse in conversations in a different way. So I think science fiction for me has this also kind of retro element that we always associate with futurism and the way we think about futurism. So we're really stuck in our very first ideas of what futurity is. And the minute you start changing it, the minute all of a sudden it stops looking like that futurism. And so it's interesting how that kind of echoes itself in ideas of what, say, Palestinianness in my case, and what does that psyche with resistance mean? Because once you disassociate that kind of interpretation or signifier of the Palestinian psyche, then all of a sudden you have a complete, you don't have that identity anymore. So this kind of identity politics and what it means and how do we define ourselves, and also in case of, you know, rising nationalism around the world is kind of central to my work as well. So the myth building is at the heart of it. So for me, it has to be something that is not, that I can kind of create my own world with it, and I can kind of, you know, run with that. And when it comes to audiences, I think that in the beginning, I used to be so frustrated living abroad and understanding that not only do I understand how, do I understand the world outside of Palestine, but I also understand what the world outside of Palestine thinks of Palestine. So you have kind of like a double onus on this perception of yourself, and I kind of felt that I had this burden of almost, before I do anything, kind of introduce the topic over and over and over again. And so I felt like my hands were tied, and now I feel like I really don't care. I just want to do a work that I find fascinating. I want to be talking about questions that I think are worth addressing, and I think it makes for a richer content. And I think one should not underestimate the audience in general, whoever that audience is. Yeah.
I have still, because we are running out of time, I don't know, I don't see questions coming in, but still I yet want to ask one question to audience, which is maybe a bit, sounds almost clumsy, but it's one that I, as a distributor, film distributor, and also curator, am confronted with a lot. And I had, by the way, interesting conversations around Larissa's Nation Estate, a sci-fi from 2012, where there was a misunderstanding that it's all very glittery and Palestinians live in one nation, built in one house, the nation in one skyscraper, and each floor is one city. And people, Arabs and Europeans alike, asked me why you are confident, or why are you happy with the solution to be locked in forever once just the building is so beautiful. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, because I would kill myself if I would need to live in such a place. So the readings were very different. But my question is, like, if audience and critics' reactions to your films differ between Lebanon or Palestine and abroad, and for Palestine, I realized, like, Arab audiences are very much like abroad, because people cannot go to Palestine, and Palestine is so much a myth, as you said already before. It's so much a fantasy for everybody. So yeah, I'm just wondering about, like, what reactions you get in the place where you make the film, or where the story is taking place, let's put it this way, and people who don't live that situation, let's put it this way.
Larissa, let me give a small anecdote. I was in Paris once. You show your work. I don't know which year you show State.
Nation Estate. Nation state. Yeah.
Yes. I hate so much nation and state, so I have problem with saying the both words. And, I remember I was with a friend and we saw it. We spent like, and it was almost in 1 hour finishing, and so we had all the time to be with the state nation, with this elevator.
Mhm.
And I remember some people clearly coming like me, because he was not, I mean, he's not an Arab. So the other was Arab like me, clearly. And they were saying, what the fuck? That's what you want from Palestine? And I said to myself, oh God, even ourselves have problem with this cold irony, if I may say, almost. Yeah. And I had, sorry, Larissa, to intervene and to tell them, come on, guys, I don't know this one because I really didn't knew you at the time. I still don't know you really. We met a bit. Come on. She is saying that maybe the dream of Palestine is a hell, for example. Well, anyway, sorry, just this anecdote. Fadali, sorry.
Oh, well, thanks. I had this I think in a German festival where somebody said, well, this is a great idea. And I was like, yes, I'm so sorry, but I really have to, I mean, it's very strange to ruin the joke by saying, please understand it as an irony, you know, like you already like revealed the joke before you even start.
It's so obvious, especially it's a, how do you say, by the way, sorry, Irit, she was literally using the code of this science fiction, a big part of science fiction, which is very cold, very, like even emotion had disappeared and things like that. You know, this one of those codes of science fiction.
And she was quotes from, quotes from Space Odyssey.
Yeah, and some people took it literally. I said, holy shit, holy, it's so obvious that she is saying something which have nothing to do with this literality. Sorry, Yanni. It's strange. Maybe I think, honestly, Larissa, I really think, honestly, that when we are Arabs and showing, when I say Arab, I mean, we are linked to this language, we are part of this world, which is called the Arab world. And we always have to, for them, or they take us so seriously, but in a stupid way, or I mean, even ourselves took ourselves so stupidly I mean, so seriously in a stupid way. And it's like we don't have, you know, second degree or third degree, or even underlines. Everything is literal most of the time. This is incredible. And it's like always you have to say, look, I can see it in another way. I can see even saying I'm not saying it, because for me, that's my feeling, of course, it was, oh, she's not seeing it because whatever she see, it's a terrible and hell future. Okay, maybe that was not your intention, but this is what I felt with the irony and everything else. Anyway, sorry,
No, I mean, it's very interesting because the nation state was very much about this kind of signifiers and over symbolism that, you know, associate with Palestinians. Palestinians are this, that, and the other thing. And it's so reductive that they become like just artifacts in a museum. And nation state was very much like a very, you know, cold and austere like environment, like a museum, holding these signifiers that are Palestinian, like the flag, the folklore dresses, the olive tree, the whatever Palestinians hold so dear. And the fact that you hold something so dear is, I think, what is problematic with this whole understanding of irony, that there's an inactivity or moving forward in where a culture just goes into static mode. And I think that is something that we really need to work on.
Ghassan, did you face like differences in audiences in Lebanon or France maybe and other parts of the world? Like, did people understand also the play with the vampire?
Let me give you another terrible example. I was in Torino Film Festival, and some people ask me, after they do this Q&A, which most of the time I don't really like, but sometimes it's very surprisingly interesting. And somebody asked, it was almost the second question, said, what are the vampires are doing in Beirut? It's not their place. So it was very strange. I said, you know, they go to New York. It's not their place too. They supposedly be in Romania and in London if you want to stay with the book. That's it. And so, but of course, not everybody receive it this way. I don't know, honestly, because when you go into genre movies, as we said previously, I mean, people are in, oh, I know those codes. Oh, somebody is beginning, because this film, Larissa, is somebody who's becoming a vampire. It's not really a vampire film. It's a becoming a vampire. A doctor becoming a vampire. And so, of course, I had a very interesting feedback, but I think a lot of people was dérouté in English. I don't know how you said that.
Disgusted?
They were, they didn't, you know, it's like, what is he trying to say? Because it's what I'm saying about Larissa movie too, you know, work, sorry, with State Nation, is they want to read it. They want to read it and read it and read it in a very clear way. They don't go with the work. And for example, when the Last Man was shown for the first time, it was in Locarno Film Festival, and at the same time, Israel, the famous Israel, attacked us. Okay, and we had what we had. So the film was there during. I was not in Locarno because I preferred to stay here with my friends and whatever. So so somebody in Repubblica, you know, the Italian media and others, they took it literally. They say this film was seeing, you know, like I was a prophet, saying already the Israel attack, and they asked me questions by email. I said, you're very strange. I'm living in Lebanon, Middle East. We have one war, then another, then a third war, and then fourth war. And do you think really that I'm prophetizing? I mean, we are just in the land of wars. So but because they cannot not read you only with their readings. They cannot be in the film or the war, whatever. They have to put them those, you know, sorry for the word, but fucking bullet points. If you don't go with the bullet points, they cannot treat you. I mean, their own bullet points, of course.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, of course, for me, when I do a work, after all, everybody interpret it the way they want. It's not, I'm not here to say how they have to say it. But this is a fact. When we're making a film coming from this area, there is no bullet point, especially when you work with film which is not, you know, drama, comedy, or whatever cause. When you're not dealing this way, they say, oh, this guy, he wants to say indirectly that this, whatever you wanted to say, khalas, they cannot read you only this way. And you, khalas, it's like a narrow place. They put the film in it, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's something with nation state that happened to me that there was a big scandal. I was part of a competition that I didn't apply for, but they chose my work, and they wanted an ironic take on joie de vivre. That was the theme, and I said there was nothing joie de vivre about my work, and I told them that it's going to be a film about a utopian Palestinian state in a skyscraper with people having no checkpoints, but visiting each city from one place to another by elevator. And they thought it was amazing. That's what they wanted. Just before they announced the awards, they told me that the CEO high up in the sponsor of the prize, which was Lacoste, the French clothing company, thought it was too anti-Israeli, too pro-Palestinian. So but it's imagine that somebody's thinking that this work is actually me thinking of really projecting a future Palestinian state looking like that, and other people thinking this is too anti-Israeli. So it's the amount of interpretation out there is you know, mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this story, yes.
As we run short of time, there's one question from the spectators I want to read to both of you, Larissa and Ghassan. What is your take on the idea of representation, knowing that the Arab world has always been misinterpreted in the Western cinema?
You want to say something, Larissa?
Misrepresented in Western cinema. I guess it's the idea that you often see, you know, Arabs represented as either the militant or the one that you should feel sorry for. And I think that's part of I think that's what the disadvantage that you see in cinema by that representation. And I think we both work with, you know, completely kind of subverting these sort of, you know, hierarchies or modes of looking at things. So I think we kind of covered most of that. What we've been talking about, we covered this question, I think.
Yeah, and knowing that the Western cinema is misrepresenting a lot of things, not only us. It even sometimes misrepresents themselves with what they can call minorities. But for me, and to just stay with my, let's say, my environment, the Arab world, I think one of the big problems is us. We are doing, most of us, films to still put our cinema or our work in what we can call, you know, what is expected, let's say. Not everybody, of course, but let's say the main work is what is expected, not only from the, yet rather than saying Western world, let's say the who is in power world. Western is now in power, but it could be something else. But mostly people coming from this area, they do work which are expected, not only for the Western world, by the way, but even for our own spectators, viewers here. So
We lost you, Ghassan. The electricity is gone.
I was trying to all the time to inform about what's happening in our place or whatever. It's like most of the time, again, this is something I really don't like. It's like how can I say? Saying sorry, I'm not very good in English. It's like trying to. It's like if art, cinema, or whatever is only a way to say something, you know, to reivindicate something, whatever it is. And for me, it's terrible because it's exactly what they are expecting from us. She was talking, Larissa, about those social, dramatic, I don't know what you call them exactly, Larissa, films. I'm not saying all of them are not realistic, but this is what they are expecting from us. Exactly that. And so please keep on doing that. You know what I mean? So we are feeding that too. Not only us, them are taking that from us.
Okay, this was a great last sentence, I would say, unless Larissa wants to add something.
Yeah.
Thank you for this panel, to take us with you to your thoughts, to come from the unexpected, and I suppose also for your own thoughts to go to more open or to fresher ideas when you work out of the box you were put in, and yeah, as Ghassan just said it. So In Vitro by Larissa Sansour and The Last Man by Ghassan Salhab are still in the festival program. You can watch it whatever time you want. If you're in Germany, the films are all geo-blocked and the festival goes on till the 30th of April. Thank you, Larissa Sansour. Thank you, Ghassan Salhab, and thank
you.
you
Thank you.
to
Bye,
Pascal
Larry.
for the
Bye.
introduction.
Bye.
Bye bye.